With the release of Yakuza 0 Director's Cut swiftly approaching, there is one major question on all RGG fans' minds. How are they going to justify more than doubling the price of the game? Well, Yakuza fans, I'm here to tell you, they won't. You may be thinking, Weebra, there's no way you could know that, you haven't even played it, and yeah, you'd be right. But what if I told you I could predict everything that's going to come with the Director's Cut and spell out everything that got teased in the trailers? Well, that's what we're gonna do today, and I have to admit, I might be a little bit too accurate in this video. So if you want to go into Yakuza 0 Director's Cut blind, then this video might reveal a bit more than you'd like. With that being said, let's crack this case wide open. Now, since the game itself was revealed during the Switch 2 Direct, I feel like that's a great topic to start on. What will Yakuza 0 play like on the Switch 2? Of course, with Yakuza Kiwami being ported to Switch in October of last year, which is functionally the exact same game as Yakuza 0, it's a decent point to compare from. And in general, it's pretty playable. I mean, there are definitely low points in the performance, but it sums up to the same experience as the PS4 version. Plus, that's not to mention that Yakuza 0 did also have a PlayStation 3 version as well. Of course, you might not know about this because it was, like many things, Japan exclusive. But anyway, the point being, it was built to run on the PlayStation 3. Now, this is future me coming in with some more new relevant information, and as of recording this, we have now gotten gameplay in, drumroll, 4K 60. What a surprise, it runs fine. Honestly, I was expecting a solid 1440-60 performance, which would be the same as the PS4 Pro's max settings, but I guess even I underestimated the Switch 2 hardware, so maybe I'm part of the problem. Anyway, in the footage we've seen, the game runs smooth as can be in 4K 60, so all around there's nothing to complain about. I think easily the worst part about playing a Yakuza game on Switch is pressing the wrong buttons during QuickTime events, and maybe karaoke. Anyway, while we're on the topic of gameplay, there is one very important feature that has been made available for the first time officially, being the ability to save anywhere. The reason I say officially is that there's actually a method to enable it on PC through some weird file changing stuff. I never bothered to do that because I'm perfectly fine with the saving system as it is, but I'm sure lots of people are excited to hear that. And while I do love the charm of the original system using payphones as a nod to the future games where you save using your cell phone, I can admit the convenience is probably going to sway a lot of people. And one last thing that I have noticed is that the text boxes in the demo version of the game seems to be using a slightly different text style. And while the font may be the same, the spacing is different, as you can see by overlaying the text. And also, while I was looking at the text, I noticed the tip boxes also seem to have a different style. They seem to be in some weird middle ground between the original Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Kiwami's tip boxes. Regardless, with that out of the way, from here on out, it's only the new stuff. And the announcement I'm personally most excited for is the new game mode, Red Light Raid. From RGG's own Twitter, Red Light Raid is an online 4-player online, yes they said online twice, mode with up to 60 unlockable characters. And it's a multiplayer mode in which you fight as a group of 4 against hordes of enemies, with the difficulty rising with each encounter. Now, while we have had a few pieces of multiplayer content in the past for some games, including Yakuza 0, that was limited to local multiplayer stuff like a few mini-games and whatnot, meaning that this is the first time that a Yakuza game can be played with friends online, not counting mods. The gameplay will feature a massive cast of 60 playable characters, 6 of which are secret. And in the gameplay we've seen, there are 6 selectable challenge missions that take place in multiple story locations from the game, and each one will include a range of 10 to 18 maps, which immediately brought up a question for me. Of these 6 locations, I noticed one thing from the trailer isn't present, being Kamurocho. And that question was only answered pretty recently as we got some gameplay showing the map selection. And it looks like the locations advertised in the menu are only the final locations of that mission. And on your way there, you have a ton of fights throughout the city, finally ending with that location. For the Dojima HQ map, you can see that for the first 8-ish maps, they take place across all of Kamurocho, and then starting with the 9th, you're placed into Dojima HQ, with the 10th stage then being the last one with a boss fight. I'm not sure about the specifics of other maps, but it's probably similar to this layout with varying degrees of difficulty. Now, speaking of the gameplay, we've now seen quite a bit of Red Light Raid, and we know how a lot of it works now. You start off by selecting one of the characters, with the playable character's fighting styles split into multiple characters to choose from, most likely for balance reasons, plus boss characters, ally characters from the story like Nishiki, as well as the rest of the cast being filled with the many Coliseum fighters and a few characters from the story, like my personal favorite, generic yellow bandana grunt from Kiryu's first tutorial. Now, I should note that not every single character from the Coliseum is on this list, and 4 of the 35 characters are left out, most notable of which being the massive fucking demon bear, for obvious reasons. I don't even want to guess how hard it would be to balance that thing, so I get it. The last 3, on the other hand, I will get to that later. After picking your character, you're given the choice to raid online, raid with friends, or raid solo. Then, once you select the stage you want to play, if you have any extra space on your team, the game will ask if you want to add CPU teammates as well, which seem to be randomized, although I can't tell exactly. Anyway, you may also notice that a lot of the characters are labeled with the text below them stating appears as a helper character. These characters are the only ones allowed to appear as CPU teammates, while the other ones are considered too strong. And this could be meant to be some sort of balance, since the ones labeled as helper characters are all low-level Coliseum characters and the weak story characters. Anyway, after making all of your selections, you'll be loaded into level 1, and from here, it's time to raid. Within the time limit, you have to clear out the wave of enemies in whatever way you can, using combos, random objects, but quite jarringly, no heat actions. And also, on the topic of heat, it should be noted that the gear mechanic is also missing in this game mode. For those unaware, Yakuza 0's gear mechanic was a system that made your combo speed rise with the amount of heat bars you have, with 3 levels in total. Although in reality, it was more or less the opposite, where the maximum heat was the regular combo speed and you get nerfed as your heat goes lower. This was probably scrapped because 1, only the main characters are affected by this mechanic and it would be a pain to balance that system in this game mode, but 2, in Red Light Raid, heat is scrapped altogether. Instead, in this game mode, every character has a single bar that they can fill to unlock a special ability, which is basically just extreme heat from Yakuza 5, although technically you could compare it to how the madness gauge works in Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza, in that it just makes your moves super fast and has nothing to do with heat actions. Now, removing heat actions makes sense from a multiplayer standpoint because the game can't just freeze while someone else does a heat action, especially considering the animations for heat actions are only done for the camera, and as soon as you pan to show the full animation in its entirety, you can see the camera trickery and constant jumping between shots. Honestly, I'm fine with this system. I just wish the meter would go higher than 1 bar. Another thing it has in common with Pirate Yakuza. Anyway, you go through each stage starting with a time limit, and you can get bonus time by taking out a certain number of enemies. And then at the end of your run, you get rewarded with the money from the enemy drops, the stages you cleared, and for clearing that mission. And that's it. All things considered, there isn't much going on here, and it's a lot less expansive than one would imagine. I'm aware making a game mode this big is pretty difficult with 60 characters and however many fight areas, but it's odd that this is all just so you can get money, considering this is the one game where money is basically printed for you at every step. But the missions aren't the biggest mystery with this game mode, because that would actually have to be the characters themselves. I've already said it a bunch, but there's 60 characters to choose from, the majority of which are from the Coliseum, and they somehow also forgot to add Laogui. But let's just get to the elephant in the room. The hidden characters. We can see 6 silhouettes, and right away for those with basic observation skills, those last 2 are clearly just Kiryu and Majima. And because every fighting style is represented except for their legend fighting styles, it's safe to say that those are the last 2 characters. And they're probably unlocked the same way you unlock them in-game, through the respective businesses. Now, the next 3 are interesting, and I've heard some good theories on who they could be. And trust me, the theories are way cooler than what we actually got. So again, the Coliseum has 35 fighters you can be matched up against, and 31 of them are in this screen, with the bear being missing, making 32 total. And you can see where this is going. That's right, these 3 characters are just more Coliseum fighters. Now, the leftmost of these 3 is actually not only a Coliseum fighter, but also a training master. It's the one and only Sometaro Komeki. Now, I am actually happy that he's featured, I just don't understand why he's considered a secret. I mean, you fight him in the beginning of the game as Majima, and only get to fight him in one of the later Coliseum bouts. And this presents a really scary question for the rest of these characters. You see, for the rest of the cast in the Red Light Raid roster, you can see each one is labeled with a price to purchase them, and that goes all the way down to the bottom. But as for the secret characters, do you unlock them by fighting them in the Coliseum? Now, in theory, that might sound possible, but in practice, I mean, as a completionist, the Coliseum was one of the things I never bothered to complete, because you get like 0 experience from winning fights, and once you're at the level where you have to unlock the final bout, you just have to earn a quick 500 million yen from fighting. I mean, only a psychopath would spend an entire afternoon getting to the maximum rank in the Colosseum. Okay, so basically, I did this so you wouldn't have to, because the last 2 Colosseum characters are only unlocked after getting to S rank in the Colosseum. The first being Daito Gozan. He looks like any other large thug, ignoring the Mike Tyson tat, but he actually is pretty scary to fight against because he reuses the moveset of Aizawa from Yakuza 5. Yep, you went through all of that effort just to fight a glorified asset flip. Did I mention I love these games? Okay, but surely the other guy's cooler, right? His name is David Diabol, a Russian or Japanese fighter, I don't know, the game can't decide. And he's got this sick design, covered in scars across his body like some sort of robot or cadaver. So of course that means he's gotta have a sick moveset, and he kinda does, because he just uses Saijima's moveset. This guy is what you unlock after spending hours grinding. The ability to fight Saijima and Aizawa clones. And that brings up one thing I keep worrying about. How will we unlock these characters? Will they be unlocked in the Red Light Raid game mode? Will there be a streamlined process to get each character from the Colosseum? Or does RGG genuinely expect us to spend an entire day grinding the Colosseum just to unlock 3 characters for a side mode? I understand that this would essentially be a playable Saijima in Yakuza 0 and a playable Aizawa for the first time, but oh my god, the Colosseum grind is so bad that I think nobody will ever get these characters unlocked in the first place. And as I was sinking into this pessimistic idea, I noticed something interesting on the main menu. Before you enter Red Light Raid, you can see a little description reading, challenge a series of battle missions in single or multiplayer, and in parentheses, complete the main story to discover more characters and movesets. And this gives me hope that these secret characters might be unlocked from finishing the story, but that is just something we'll have to find out come June 5th. Now, there is one more character left, and he is the one character that is actually interesting and doesn't scare me in terms of unlocking him. That's because the final hidden character in the leftmost slot is the one, the only, Munan Suzuki, the cult leader from that one Majima sub-story. And the only reason Munan's portrait is the only one that doesn't match up with the image is because he's never had a portrait, since his fight was limited to that one sub-story. That was all we ever got of Munan in this game, but with him being added to this mode, they had to give him a portrait. And maybe you're thinking, how are you sure it's him? Well, looking at the hair shape, as well as the silhouette's right shoulder, we can see it's Munan Suzuki doing the Munancho pose. Personally, I love seeing this guy's weird combat style every time I play this sub-story, so I'm excited to see what he plays like in this. Now, before we talk about the new scenes and story moments, I want to touch on what might be the most important change to the game with the director's cut, and that's the addition of an English dub. At the time of recording this, pretty much the entire cast has had an English dub first look uploaded to the Sega channel, and going through each one, Matt Mercer is great as Majima because he's Matt Mercer.
After all, at the Grand, the customer is king. You'll recall.
Yongya returns as Kiryu, and the comments are full of Reddit's best and brightest, not knowing how a contract works.
Are you finished talking yet? Let's just do this already.
As for Nishiki, like a lot of people predicted, he's now voiced by the one and only Kaiji Tang, the voice actor for Ichiban in the Like a Dragon games.
Let's get to the drinking then. You and me are going all night tonight, right?
For those unaware why this is seen as fitting, Nishiki's original voice actor, Kazuhiro Nakaya, was loved by the crew so much that he returned as Ichiban in Yakuza Like a Dragon. So then it only makes sense for the English voice actor of Ichiban, Kaiji Tang, to do the reverse and take on the role of Nishiki in his first English appearance. And that is disregarding the Yakuza 1 dub for PS2, because yes, we've seen the memes. As for the rest of the characters, Makoto sounds good.
Is somebody there? Are you here for a massage?
Kashiwagi is dubbed by David fucking Hayter, otherwise known as Solid Snake.
Do you even comprehend how serious this shit is? Huh?
And Tachibana sounds really promising.
Money is power. There's a reckoning on the horizon. I'll weigh my power against that of the Tojo clan.
As for the lieutenants, Kuze sounds a little whispery, but to be fair, trying to replicate Hitoshi Ozawa's voice is a tough act.
The man who gets beat down
He ain't the loser.
Awano again sounds whispery,
Hell, from where I'm standing right now, I could kiss you.
but oh my god, Shibusawa sounds fucking perfect, and I cannot wait to hear him in-game.
Tachibana Real Estate's to blame for this, sure enough. Honestly, with the pressure we put on them, it makes sense they would go above our heads.
Sagawa is played by Andrew Kishino, Yamai's English voice actor from Infinite Wealth, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him.
If you're gonna lie to me, there's nothing I can do for you, man.
And Oda is voiced by Alejandro Saab, of which I'm a massive fan.
Let's drop the false pretenses, Namase-san. You can throw all the tantrums you like. This wad is all you're gonna get from us.
And last but definitely least, there's Kazama's trailer.
I see. Yeah, tell me. Can you do it? Kazuma?
Honestly, this performance shows some promise, and I can't wait to see the rest of his scenes. Sorry, what's that? This trailer is all of his scenes? Why'd they give him a fucking trailer then? Let's finally take a look at the new scenes. And first, I gotta note that RGG said themselves that there is now 26 minutes of new content. So what I'm gonna talk about is only a fraction of it, if I'm right. First, we have a scene of Kiryu and Nishiki freaking out in a car. Now, since Kiryu seems to be wearing his gray suit and red shirt, this would have to be in the post-game after he buys it. Meaning that we might just get a bit of post-game content, maybe some more cutscenes at the ending, which sounds neat, but nothing here has story implications, since again, it's in the post game. Anyway, moving on to Kuze, we actually see a brand new scene from what looks like the ending of his 5th fight outside of Kazama Family HQ. There might be a few lines here, more cinematic direction, or an animated scene rather than the quick dialogue we got, but other than that, I can imagine this scene will have the same beats. But that's a scene that already existed and is seemingly reworked. The rest of the scenes we've seen are all completely new, like this scene with Kiryu throwing a man into a wall at Mach speed. Now, on closer inspection, you can actually see that this man is the loan shark from the intro of the game that helps frame Kiryu for murder. So that would explain why Kiryu is attacking him. But this scene isn't so simple. First, we meet this guy at the beginning of the game. Then again in the middle of chapter 1, where we raid Toko Credit to beat answers out of him. Then, as we all know, Kuze busts into the building, Toko Guy leaves, and we never actually see him again. That is until the beginning of chapter 2, where Nishiki is visiting Kiryu's apartment, and he tells us, quote, "The president of Toko Credit was found dead, shot in his office." Again, keep in mind, this is chapter 2, but on closer inspection at the trailer, we see that Kiryu is in his white suit, which he only gets for the first time in chapter 5. On top of this, the scene in the trailer takes place during the day, and the scene where we bust into Toko Credit happens in the afternoon. And according to Nishiki, he is meant to be dead that very same night, so it couldn't possibly take place this early. And this implies that he never died like Nishiki said, but somehow survived. Now, it's believable he could survive if, I don't know, some random grunt were sent after him, but this is the Dojima family, who would use a hired gun. And you might recall that the Dojima family has a skilled assassin on their payroll. Yes, that's right, the killer who would be sent after the president is Lao Gui, the best assassin that money can buy. It can also be easily assumed that the Dojima family killed him in some fashion, and while Kiryu assumes it was Kuze himself, it was most likely Lao Gui, because that exact situation is mirrored with Kurihara in the beginning. Now, I'm fine with a character somehow getting a second wind after a fake death, and I can understand adding a quick scene to flesh out a minor character, but implying that this little rat somehow managed to slip out from under the Dojima family and evade or trick the best assassin in all of Asia is just ludicrous, because that's what this scene implies, that he is still alive as early as chapter 5. Except, as I was watching this footage, I realized a very important detail about this shot. Hey, wait a minute, I recognize that sign! Okay, it's not what it sounds like, I just realized where this is. This is not Kamurocho. This is in Sotenbori, on the street with the Mahjong Parlor and Club Mars. And since this is Kiryu in Sotenbori, this means that this scene has to take place in chapter 13, when Kiryu and Oda travel to Sotenbori. Now, this scene would help flesh out that slow part where the game just tells you to sit around and do nothing, and since this spot is right outside of Cal Video, the place with the telephone, this scene probably takes place when you enter or exit the building. My guess is when you exit, exit because you approach the president coming from the door. I would love to hear anyone else's theories on what could be happening here, but this scene is too much for me. Let's move on to something less crazy. We get this scene of Majima using a telephone booth, which could take place at various points in the game. Nothing comes to mind on what this could be for in the story, so thankfully I can turn my brain off for this one, but also just keep in mind that he's on the phone in this scene. Because next we get a scene of Billiken smoking while on the phone in a hospital gown, implying he survived. And you know what? Fuck it, sure. Billiken survives, who cares anymore? It's at least believable that he could live. He took a single bullet to the back and collapsed. He could probably pull through. My theory is that this might actually be a way to expand on the character of Nishtani by letting Billiken talk about his adopted son a bit more. Mainly because Nishtani's voice actor sadly passed away in 2020 due to cancer, and so expanding on a character through the words of his closest relative would be their best way to tie into the later Kijin clan that we see in Like a Dragon Gaiden. And who knows, maybe we'll actually see the mysterious Nishtani II and fill in the gaps. Either way, I think the decision to feature both of these clips in the trailers was intentional, and it's very likely that these two clips are from the same scene where they share a phone call. But again, I noticed something was off. Wait a minute, that's not the Sotenbori street texture, and sadly, I was correct. I need to leave the house more. Because those are actually the patterns that appear on the edges of Showa Street at the bottom of Kamurocho. And this exact phone booth is the one at the entrance of Pink Street, meaning that during your time in Kamurocho as Majima, during chapters 15 and 16, you will have a phone call with Billiken, perfectly mirroring Kiryu's interaction with the president. Each character will have a new story segment when they travel to the other character's city. I'm personally a big fan of this because it'll make those sections a lot more interesting since there wasn't much to speak of before. Kiryu's Sotenbori section is like 10 minutes long, and while Majima does get 2 chapters in Kamurocho, they are 2 of the shortest chapters in the series. But finally, we have the one scene that everyone has been talking about, with a person wearing a green jacket in a wheelchair. Now, the moment we see the green jacket, everyone instantly thinks of Saejima, I mean Lee. But this might not be so cut and dry, and trust me when I say this, I have a wild card guess you might not be expecting. You see, Lee is a character who had a explosive exit. Yeah, no, he's dead as fuck. Okay, so then how do I explain this jacket? Well, first we should talk about the exact jacket worn by Lee. This jacket is the very same jacket worn by Saejima in Yakuza 5, except Lee's coat actually has the red arm thing and Saejima doesn't get that until Yakuza 6. 1 year after Zero. You can tell this is the coat because it's actually named in Yakuza 0's Premium Adventure costumes as N3B Parka, which is a coat released by Alpha Industries. Now, the reason I mention it by name is because the coat being worn in the new scene is clearly missing a few important details. Namely, the giant fur-lined hood, which would mean that this is a different coat, but that also doesn't have to mean this isn't Lee. You see, the product placement deal with Alpha Industries could have expired, meaning they don't need to use the jacket anymore. But Saejima has worn this coat as recently as Infinite Wealth. I'm not going to show the scene because it's a little spoilery, but that is to say that the deal would have to expire in this tiny window to explain this being Lee in a knockoff N3B Parka, which is a long-winded way to say it's unlikely to be him. I mean, why would they bother modeling a new green coat for a character who already wears a green coat? What I think is more likely is that this is a different character. Now, looking at this scene, we can see that we are likely in the top right of Sotenbori, in front of that takoyaki stall, and Majima is in front of the Kijin Clan HQ, meaning that this mystery character has to be someone who is injured or assumed killed, is in Sotenbori during the story, and knows Majima because they are seeking him out. This is a short list, but it includes Nishtani, Lee, Billiken, and my own theory and personal dark horse in this race, but I want to go over the others first. Now, we've already gone over Lee. Assuming he did survive, he wouldn't just switch to a different coat for no reason. Nishtani is also ultra dead. One, because he overdosed on lead, but also because respecting a deceased voice actor is a super important thing in Japanese media, and Keiichi Fujiwara simply can't be replaced. Third is Billiken, but he only got shot in the back, and we can see in the other scene he's not covering his face. Which leads me to the one character who I think this might be. The wheelchair guy is none other than the Chinese doctor, baby. That's right, the Chinese guy that took a crowbar to the sternum is the one in the wheelchair here. If you don't remember this guy, I wouldn't blame you. This is the guy that sells you out to Sagawa and his men, then gets the half-life treatment. Then, after you fight a bunch of Sagawa's men, Lee says that he's gonna take the doctor back to Mahjong Jambalaya, and then the following scene when he gets back is, So it is safe to assume he got him back there safely, and I feel like the doctor more than likely lived. Why would the Chinese doctor want to talk to Majima? Maybe again for the same reason Billiken did, to talk about a different and more important character. And actually, now that I think about it, maybe I can take another look at that jacket. It's not the N3B parka, there's no fur. I mean, it's not like you can just... Oh my god, the fur is detachable. Fuck, it's Lee.